LSU seems to have everyone's attention and seems to be the top job on the market as of right now. I don't see any other job available that would make that an untrue statement.
No.
So when it comes to LSU, you put out a hot board. Just walk me through where they're at right now when it comes to their candidate process and kind of figuring out who the right guy's going to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, let's go back in time a little bit.
Please.
Right, Sunday, hours after the devastating loss to A&M, you had A&M basically taking over. Death Valley was not a good look. You had Brian Kelly go to the facility. Position coaches were in. They were going on the bye. Players were at home because it was a mandatory off day. Things were good. We expected staff changes. And then, 4 hours later, by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock Central Time, word started to circulate that Brian Kelly was out. So I think it's important to start there to understand how rapidly this changed on Sunday. And to understand where they're at. There's a lot of questions about what Scott Woodward, the athletic director's future is. The governor's involved, which the governor involved in college football gets things really interesting. So I think the thing that you have to remember when we talk LSU this whole time is that there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's really unclear at this point who was making the hire and when this hire is actually going to be made and when the hiring process is really actually going to start.
And the crazy part about the A&M game is they were up at half.
Yep.
There was a part of you, if you're watching that game, you're saying A&M kind of controlled that game, but LSU's leading. It is Death Valley. It is at night. It is Brian Kelly doing pretty well at night historically at the head coach at LSU.
22.
I think, that second loss ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back, evidently. Going back in time to that whole situation, how on the table was the firing of Brian Kelly going into that game in your mind?
It was something that you were hearing about and, definitely something that you were, understanding that could be on the table later in the year and that a loss to A&M could really set some things up to go in a certain direction. I think that second half, though, just really threw everything off. It's halftime. You're like, okay, maybe LSU's still in the playoff if they can knock off A&M. And then next thing you know, I'm getting texts about what's Brian Kelly's buyout and things like that, and by the end of the third quarter. So things really just took off in that second half, and I don't think we've slowed down since.
It felt like one of those things where it's tough to unsee certain things across your life. It's tough to unsee mom kissing Santa Claus. It's tough to unsee A&M doing what they did to LSU. In Baton Rouge at night, seeing that student section take over where they were in Death Valley, that whole thing was just jarring. So I guess that part of it makes sense.
Yeah.
But moving to who could be the next head coach at LSU.
Let's do it.
It feels like every single job that opens up that has a big logo next to it, we're all going to just immediately say the same thing of, well, you got to call Marcus Freeman. You got to give him a ring and maybe even shoot him a text. However you want to get in touch with Marcus Freeman, you do that. Is the LSU job any different than the other job openings for one Marcus Freeman in your mind, or what you're hearing?
Just like anything at this point, like Florida, Penn State, LSU, they're all going to reach out to Marcus Freeman. From everything I've been told, Marcus really isn't going to give any thought to that until his season's over. So it's too early to say he's done somewhere, but it's way too early to say he's seriously having conversations anywhere either. And he loves what he's got going on at Notre Dame.
Because I do see things on the internet of Marcus Freeman's already turned down, Florida already turned down, Penn State. Has he turned anywhere down yet that you're aware of?
Yeah, I think we'll find out more about all that as the season goes on.
Gotcha. So let's assume that Marcus Freeman's in that unicorn tier. You can't land him. Everyone's going after Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin seems to be the belle of the ball in this current world we're in with the coaching carousel. Does LSU make more sense for a Lane Kiffin than a Florida in your mind?
I'm not going to really try to pick apart those two differences. I think there's pathways to both that make a lot of sense. LSU is arguably a top 5 job in college football. It might be even top 3. We could spend all day arguing about that.
Sure.
The proximity to the talent, the recognition of the LSU brand might be incomparable to anyone except in Ohio State or Michigan. So you look at that at LSU, and then at Florida with Lane Kiffin, he has a chance to go be a Steve Spurrier. He can win a national title. Pretty sure he met his wife or ex-wife in Gainesville. So there's some family ties there. At both places, they will build you a statue probably if you won a national title or two.
So in the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes,
let's stay center, right?
Please,
please. He can do a lot of those things at Ole Miss too.
Yeah,
and they're on track to do a lot of that this year.
Which is the which is the hardest part. Like you just said, the psychology of it all is kind of where we're at, and you're trying to pick apart the psychology of a one Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult thing to do. So I don't envy your job trying to get out the intel. It seems like
they're
going
to go deep in the playoff right now. They're going to be favored in every regular season game remaining. They're in a spot to possibly go to the SEC title game. I mean, and they've been really fun to watch this year. They're really good. They just won at Oklahoma. It would be really incorrect to say anything like they're going to lose in the first round. Like this is a team that is seriously going to compete for a national title. So then, can you not talk to Lane Kiffin until like, what is it, January 19th? Like later than that? Like that is something that a lot of athletic directors are trying to think through right now and saying, is it worth waiting for Lane, or do I go get someone now that I know can start talking to recruits before the December 3rd National Signing Day, before the portal opens on January 2nd? All those things are being taken into account across the country, specifically, LSU and Florida.
Especially for Lane Kiffin, who majors so heavily in maximizing the portal for his roster every single year, and we're not going to get that guy until, again, if he plays for a national championship, 2+ weeks after that portal opens. It feels like it wouldn't make a ton of sense. And the portal's
only open for 15 days. So now, now you're really getting in the nitty-gritty. If an LSU or Florida hires Lane in late January, he would have to deal with the portal opening again for some players at the school he picked. It'll be a mess. It'll be like nothing we've seen before. But when we talk about all this now too, I think we have to rethink what dates the college football coaching carousel can fall under.
So there's the Lane Kiffin tier and the Marcus Freeman tier, and then
I would say they're in the same tier.
Yeah,
I don't want to say they're in different. I think they're in the same tiers.
Would you say that a Lane Kiffin? Because in my mind, I'm like, Marcus Freeman is maybe hanging up the phone quicker than a Lane Kiffin would be. Do you think that's still accurate? Maybe. Or is that accurate to begin with, I guess is my question.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have those two guys, put them in the same tier or different tiers. Then it feels like there's a laundry list of other different guys that would make sense for an LSU to go after. You and I talked about the fit of a Brent Key if he decided he wanted to leave Georgia Tech.
Line of scrimmage would be great.
Eli Drinkwitz, now they're going to play a freshman quarterback. Looks like if you're trying to get him into your building. He's going to have a lot of interest
from everyone across the board,
He may not be in the college football playoff like I predicted they would be midway through the season, neither here nor there. What is is it truly as grouped together as it is in my mind when it comes to everyone else outside of those two guys? Or is there like it's Brom and Drinkwitz probably at the top, and then some other guys mixed in? Or like what's the separation in that middle pack of candidates in your mind for this LSU job?
I think it's so early at LSU. I'm just gonna pack it all together.
That's great.
I'm not gonna come out and say there's like that much differentiators. Now you mentioned Drink, Brom, Brent Key. I think Clark Lee is going to get brought up in that conversation. The G6 name that continues to be brought up with the LSU job in particular. You get a John Summerall who's in state at Tulane, won 2 conference titles at Troy, was in the American title game in year 1 at Tulane. He makes a lot of sense. Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. He is at his alma mater. He's done so much. He's made a playoff. Does he want to try to bite off the SEC or staying close to home? What he wants, like all those names make sense. Joe Brady, the Buffalo Bills head coach, not head coach, offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He's gonna get brought up a lot for a lot of NFL head coaching jobs. But that do the heartstrings kind of
2019 was a good year,
2019 was a big year with Joe Brady. So, and there's a lot of other names we can talk about, but those are like kind of the sitting Power 4 group of 6 head coaches who make sense. Plus, you get the NFL name in there too.
I'm just going way off the reservation here.
Okay.
Does an Ed Orgeron factor into any of these openings? Maybe it's not LSU, maybe it's not Florida, but is he like an Arkansas potential guy? Could he end up being on the staff at LSU if they hire the right guy? Like, where does Ed Orgeron fall in this discussion? Because talking about LSU, he feels like a name that's going to get brought up by wild corners of Twitter.
So Coach O's name keeps coming up at a lot of places. And I wouldn't say he's like the top candidate, but he's an interesting candidate. So, like, yes, an Arkansas would be interesting. I don't see him in that top group of candidates at this point.
Sure.
I've got a lot of phone calls in the last 10 days about his name coming up at certain schools. Like, if you hire a coordinator or an assistant coach who has never been a head coach before, do you bring in Coach O to help with recruiting and kind of set the culture? Things like that.
Awesome.
He's really interested, too, in trying to get back to the West Coast. He had so much success at USC. His name's come up at UCLA and Oregon State. early on. We'll see how those searches continue to go. But yeah, he's intriguing.
Intriguing, if nothing else, just as a human being. Take college football away from it. The dude's just an intriguing person.
Well, and if you and I, let's say you're the AD, I'm the head coach, and we're like, okay, like, how do we want to build a culture and attack, like, recruiting and stuff? I'm like, yeah, I want Coach O sitting in, like, kitchens and living rooms. So, yeah.
Let's get him in here.
Yeah.
With that big, deep Cajun voice. I'm all the way here for that. Last question on LSU before we pivot to Florida. Kind of a bridge to the two is I feel like a lot of them, when I talk through what the wish list would be when it comes to criteria. I'm like, okay, bravado, LSU and Florida both probably want that. Visor guy like Lane Kiffin, Spurrier, Edge probably both want that. Score points probably both want that. Is there any big differentiating factor when you're breaking down the candidates of an LSU and a Florida in terms of, well, Florida needs to have this, whereas LSU isn't really interested in this certain factor with their next head coach?
I don't know if it's like a very stark differentiator. I think Florida is really Billy Napier was good at a lot of things. The one thing that he was not was someone who was loud. And when I think about a Lane Kiffin or Eli Drinkowitz, I think of someone who loves to coach ball, but also does it in a very vivid way. And that just wasn't Billy Napier. And Billy Napier, did a lot of things right. It just didn't work on the field. Sure. My point is, I think Florida really wants to be like, can we go get our next Steve Spurrier? LSU, I think, is just like, who's going to win national titles here? And Florida wants that just as much too. But when I think of the Florida job right now, like they want Lane, they want someone like Lane. So ideally, they want Lane. But we'll see how it all shakes out.